You ever apologized for something that wasn't your fault? Or spent hours replaying a conversation in your mind, wondering if you accidentally hurt someone, even though they never said you did? If that sounds familiar, what you're about to hear may completely change the way you understand yourself. Because sometimes, the strongest feelings of guilt don't come from doing something wrong. They come from believing, deep down, that you are somehow responsible for keeping everyone else happy. One of the strangest things about guilt is that it doesn't always tell the truth. We often think of guilt as an emotional alarm system. If you did something wrong, guilt reminds you to make it right. In healthy situations, that's exactly what it does. But sometimes that alarm system becomes overly sensitive. It starts going off even when there's no real danger, no real mistake, and no real reason to blame yourself. Imagine having a smoke detector that goes off every time you make toast. After a while, you'd realize the problem isn't the toast. The problem is the detector. Yet when it comes to our emotions, we rarely question the alarm. We assume that because we feel guilty, we must have done something wrong. That's where many people get trapped. The truth is that guilt and responsibility are not always the same thing. Many people who constantly feel guilty are actually kind, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic. They care about how others feel. They want to avoid hurting people. They try to be fair. Ironically, these positive qualities can sometimes become the very reason they suffer. Think about someone who receives a text from a friend saying, "We need to talk." Immediately, their mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I forget something important? Hours later, they discover the friend simply wanted advice about work. But during those hours, their body reacted as if they had committed a serious mistake. Sound familiar? Our brains are incredibly good at filling in missing information. Unfortunately, they don't always fill it with facts. They often fill it with fear. Psychologists have long observed that people who struggle with excessive guilt tend to assume personal responsibility for events they don't actually control. This pattern is sometimes called personalization. It happens when your mind automatically connects someone else's emotions or problems back to you. Your coworker seems quiet. Maybe I offended them. Your partner looks tired. Maybe they're disappointed in me. Your friend doesn't reply for a day. Maybe they're angry. Most of the time, none of those assumptions are true. Yet your emotional brain treats them as if they are. One reason this happens often begins much earlier in life. Children naturally believe they are the center of their world. If parents argue, young children sometimes assume they somehow caused it. If a parent seems stressed or distant, the child may quietly conclude that they must have done something wrong. As adults, we know logically that children aren't responsible for adult problems. But emotionally, those early lessons can stay with us. If you grew up in an environment where love depended on being good, helpful, quiet, or responsible, your nervous system may have learned something powerful. If people around me are unhappy, it must be my job to fix it. That belief doesn't disappear simply because you become an adult. It quietly follows you into friendships, romantic relationships, workplaces, and even casual conversations. Suddenly, saying no feels selfish. Setting boundaries feels cruel. Taking time for yourself feels irresponsible. And every time someone else experiences disappointment, your mind immediately wonders what you should have done differently. But here's something important. Other people's emotions belong to them. That sentence sounds simple. Actually believing it can take years. Many people confuse compassion with responsibility. Compassion means caring about someone's feelings. Responsibility means believing you caused those feelings or must solve them. Those are two completely different things. Imagine your friend loses a job. You comfort them. You listen. You encourage them. That's compassion. Now imagine you start feeling guilty because you couldn't somehow prevent it from happening. That's misplaced responsibility. Healthy empathy connects you with people. Unhealthy guilt makes you carry burdens that were never yours. There's another hidden reason unnecessary guilt becomes so powerful. Our brains crave certainty. When something uncomfortable happens, having an explanation feels better than having none at all. Even blaming yourself can feel strangely comforting because at least it creates the illusion of control. If it's my fault, maybe I can prevent it next time. If I caused this, maybe I can fix it. But life isn't always that simple. Sometimes relationships change. Sometimes people are stressed. Sometimes misunderstandings happen. Sometimes bad things occur without anyone being guilty. Accepting uncertainty is emotionally difficult. Blaming yourself often feels easier. Have you ever noticed how differently you judge yourself compared to other people? Imagine your closest friend tells you they forgot to return a phone call because they were overwhelmed with work. Would you call them selfish? Probably not. You'd probably say, "You're human." Now imagine you forget the same phone call. Suddenly your inner voice says something very different. You're careless. You're disappointing people. You should have done better. Isn't it interesting how kindness comes so easily for others but feels almost impossible to offer yourself? Many people live with an internal critic that never seems satisfied. No matter how much they accomplish, help others, or try to do the right thing, the critic always finds another reason to feel guilty. You could spend an entire day supporting everyone around you. Then forget one small promise. Guess which memory your brain focuses on before you fall asleep? Not the 100 things you did well. The one thing you missed. Our minds naturally pay more attention to mistakes than successes. This tendency helped humans survive by noticing potential threats. But in modern life, it can create a distorted picture of who we really are. Instead of seeing ourselves as generally caring people who occasionally make mistakes, we start seeing ourselves as people who are constantly falling short. That belief quietly drains confidence. It also affects relationships. People who feel unnecessary guilt often apologize excessively. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm sorry for asking. I'm sorry for existing." Over time, apologizing becomes automatic. Not because they've done something wrong. Because they've learned that taking responsibility quickly feels emotionally safer than risking conflict. Unfortunately, constant apologizing can create another problem. It teaches your brain that you must always assume blame. Every unnecessary apology reinforces the idea that you are probably at fault. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can say isn't, "I'm sorry." Sometimes it's simply, "Thank you for your patience." Notice the difference. One assumes guilt. The other expresses appreciation without blaming yourself. Small changes like that gradually reshape how your mind interprets everyday interactions. Another surprising source of unnecessary guilt is perfectionism. Many people think perfectionists are simply trying to impress others. But beneath perfectionism often lies fear. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of criticism. Fear of rejection. If making mistakes feels dangerous, then every tiny imperfection starts triggering guilt. Even success stops feeling satisfying because the goalposts constantly move. You finish one project. Instead of celebrating, your mind asks what you could have done better. Someone compliments you. You immediately point out your flaws. Nothing ever feels good enough. That's an exhausting way to live. Here's something worth remembering. Healthy people make mistakes. Healthy relationships survive disappointment. Healthy friendships don't require perfection. If someone expects flawless behavior from you at all times, the problem may not be you. Sometimes guilt also comes from confusing boundaries with selfishness. Imagine a coworker asks you to stay late again. You're already exhausted. You finally say no. As you drive home, guilt appears almost instantly. Why? Because somewhere inside, you've connected saying no with letting people down. But saying no isn't automatically unkind. In fact, constantly saying yes while silently becoming resentful usually damages relationships far more than honest boundaries ever could. Boundaries don't push healthy people away. They teach others how to respect your limits. Here's an interesting question. Can you remember the last time someone told you no? Maybe they couldn't attend an event. Maybe they declined your invitation. Maybe they were simply too busy. Did you stop loving them? Did you decide they were selfish forever? Probably not. Yet when you imagine saying no yourself, your brain predicts disaster. That's another thinking trap. We often expect ourselves to face harsher judgment than we actually receive. Let's talk about something even deeper. Sometimes unnecessary guilt isn't really about today's situation. It's about old emotional wounds searching for familiar feelings. Our brains love familiarity. Even painful emotions can become strangely familiar if we've experienced them repeatedly. That's why some people automatically feel guilty whenever things are going well. Peace feels unfamiliar. Calm feels suspicious. Happiness almost feels like something bad must be around the corner. So the mind searches for reasons to worry. Reasons to apologize. Reasons to feel responsible. Not because they're true. Because they're familiar. Recognizing this pattern can be incredibly freeing. The next time guilt appears, instead of immediately believing it, try asking yourself one simple question. What evidence do I actually have that I've done something wrong? Not what you fear. Not what you imagine. What evidence? Very often, you'll discover something surprising. There isn't any. Just uncertainty. Just assumptions. Just an old emotional habit repeating itself. That pause creates space. And in that space, something powerful becomes possible. Choice. Instead of automatically accepting guilt, you begin evaluating it. Is this healthy guilt reminding me to repair something? Or is this false guilt trying to make me responsible for things beyond my control? Those two experiences feel remarkably similar inside the body. But they lead to completely different lives. Healthy guilt encourages growth. False guilt encourages self-punishment. One moves you forward. The other keeps you trapped. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is this. You are not responsible for everyone's comfort. You are not responsible for preventing every disappointment. You are not responsible for reading minds. You are not responsible for fixing every problem. You are responsible for your intentions, your actions, your honesty, and your willingness to learn when you genuinely make mistakes. That's enough. More than enough. Imagine how much mental energy would become available if you stopped carrying emotional responsibilities that never belonged to you. Imagine conversations without replaying every sentence afterward. Imagine saying no without spending the rest of the day feeling guilty. Imagine accepting that someone else's bad mood doesn't automatically mean you failed. That kind of freedom doesn't happen overnight. It's built one thought at a time. One healthier belief replacing one old assumption. One unnecessary apology left unsaid. One boundary respected. One moment of self-compassion practiced when your inner critic starts speaking again. And perhaps, little by little, you'll begin to notice something extraordinary. The guilt that once felt like proof that you were a good person starts becoming less necessary. Because goodness isn't measured by how much blame you carry. It's measured by how honestly you live, how kindly you treat others, and just as importantly, how kindly you learn to treat yourself. The next time guilt quietly whispers that you've done something wrong, pause before believing it. Ask yourself whether you've truly violated your values, or whether you're simply reacting to an old habit your mind learned years ago. That single question may become the beginning of a completely different relationship with yourself. Because sometimes, the greatest act of emotional maturity isn't learning how to carry more guilt. It's learning when to finally put it down. If this helped you understand your mind better, subscribe for more videos like this.